Hello, aspirants. I guess you're all doing really well. Now, this is the second paper, that is GS paper 2. We have already seen various faculties have discussed from PW how the paper GS1 was. And hopefully, GS paper 2 has also been one of the interesting, surprises for many candidates in the past few years. So let us analyze this time how this paper has been. Now, I am looking at the paper along with you for the first time. Let's analyze and see what are the various intricacies associated with this particular paper. Let's begin. See, if we see the paper, we see the previous year papers, how they have been. It gives you a brief tinge how the paper are going to come. As we always say, the previous year papers always form a foundation for the present. So let's see how the previous year papers have been. Let's see. In the previous years, if you realize, from Indian polity, the core polity subject, you realize there have been a lot of papers like 9 in 2019, 29 again. Over the time, if you realize, even in 2025, you have 10 questions from Indian polity. So what do you realize from this? You realize that the core polity questions are approximately 10 in number, approximately 9 to 10 every year. So that helps you to analyze the weightage, what the questions generally come in the mains examination. Now, when we come to social justice, now something very important I like to tell you also, when we study society in GS paper 1, we study social justice in paper 2. Many people get confused that what is the difference between them. Please understand. When you are studying, let us say, caste system, or you're studying the ingredients of caste system, there, with respect to every ingredient of the society, there can be various issues that are associated with that. And to resolve the problems and disputes and the issues that pertain in the society, the topic of social justice comes. So please remember, anything that you read in GS1 becomes equally valid and important in GS2 also. So let us see. Social justice, 5 questions, 3 questions, in 2021, 4 questions. On an average, if you realize, 3 to 4 or 5 questions have been coming from this particular chapter, or rather a section. Now, there is a very good correlation which we generally see when the social justice question increases. Please understand, that is on the basis of what analysis I have done over the years. When the social justice questions tend to increase, there is a general trend that the marks that the students get in this paper are relatively lower. We will see that also trend, but overall, let's see. With respect to governance, now what are the questions that have come? Now, if you see 2, 4, 3, 1, 2, 4, and 2025, 2 questions have come. So on an average, if you realize 1, 2, 3 questions have come every year. Let us see international relations. See again, 4, 4, 3, 4, 4, in 2025, again 4. So on an average, 3 to 4 questions come from this section also. So what is the major section or the major chunk from which the questions have come over the years and this year also? That is Indian polity. Indian polity section. Now, the weightage can little bit vary, but this is the major trend. That is why this paper becomes very polity centric also. So let us see and move ahead with this. So you have basically got a trend. What is the weightage of the various sections in this particular paper, right? Let's move ahead. Now, with this, please remember, there is a stimulator test that has been there. So if you really want to write the paper like the students have been writing, you download the paper, submit it to the app. Your question paper, your answer paper will be checked properly and you'll be getting the marks. So this is something very unique initiative from the side of PW OnlyIAS. You can make the best use of it, right? Write the UPSC Mains 2025 paper and get them evaluated from the PW team for free. So if you really want to check yourself where you are right now, download the paper, write the paper, submit it. There is an expert team that is sitting there that is going to evaluate every answer and send it to you. It is a unique opportunity. Please make the best use of it. Let's move ahead. This is a 2024 paper. You would have already seen, again, a basic trend we have already seen with respect to Lok Adalat, electoral reforms, Auditor General. So a lot of questions had come, which we will analyze. But for us, what is more important is this year's paper, right? Now, please see. If you realize this is this year's paper, now many would be excited, sir. What is the question paper? How have the questions come? This is the first overview. I am seeing the paper for the first time along with you. So it is like an aspirant who is seeing the question paper for the first time. So let's analyze that. What is the first question? Now let's see. discuss the corrupt practices for the purpose of Representation of People Act 1951. 1951. Now, please remember one thing. Whenever we talk about GS paper 2 and GS paper 3, these are majorly, please understand, these are majorly current affairs centric papers, where what happens? Anything that is in your newspapers, they will pick it up, correlate it with your syllabus, and you will get the question paper or the questions that are present here. The word corrupt practices has been there from the past. I think if you keep on reading the newspapers, you will realize in past 2 months also, there were 2 articles in the Indian Express and I think 2 to 3 editorials in the Hindu that mentioned or dealt with the corrupt practices. So what is mentioned in the Representation of People Act, there are a lot of points that are present which basically tell what are the corrupt practices. So this was present in the newspapers also, and in various answers that PW OnlyIAS had given for answer writing practice, they had mentioned this question itself. So you had to basically describe or tell which are the corrupt practices here, analyze whether the increase in the assets of the legislature or their associates, disproportionate to their known source of income, would constitute to undue influence and consequently a corrupt practice. Now see, very important, you will realize this. Very often you hear that whenever, let us say, you see a member of parliament for one particular tenure has certain assets, the next time he is contesting the election, his assets are seen, they have actually tripled. Now, if similar case happens with a bureaucrat, supposingly his assets increase, there is a rigorous investigation that takes place and they say it is beyond your known source of income. So that means you have done a corrupt practice. So that is why you have to analyze this also. Similar, this was a debate that went on in the parliament also. There were many opposition leaders who talked about this, that whether we can include it or not. There were various articles that were present in the Hindu also that mentioned this. So it is basically dealing with the corrupt practices, corruption, more income than the known source of income. Does that constitute a corrupt practice within the Representation of People Act? So this is again little technical. I would very well tell you this is a little technical. If you have read this, it is little challenging. This question was a little challenging for the reason because it also requires for you to know what corrupt practices are. Along with it, it also knows that it needs you to analyze this also. So good level question that has been seen here. Next. Now, other question which I'm seeing, comment on the need for the administrative tribunals as compared to the court system. Now, please understand, various tribunals have been created by the government in order to counter the court system also. If you realize that, what generally happens now, in the court system, you realize judges are there, and you file the case. It takes a lot of time for the cases to basically get solved or resolved, and years might pass. So what has the government done? They have enacted a lot of tribunals, right? Under those tribunals, quick justice is generally given. Like, so if you see National Green Tribunal, right? Over there, not only judges, but other officers, administrative officers might also be a part of it who are retired, let us say. So it is a mechanism through which quicker judgment can be given. Now, over here, they want you to analyze what is the difference between an administrative tribunal as compared to the court system. You can use the articles of the Constitution also and compare it. Assess the impact of the recent tribunal reforms. In 2021, government made a lot of reforms with respect to these tribunals. Now, I had very well told you, please understand this. Major reforms happened in 2021 where various provisions had been made with respect to the ordinances being passed. So that thing was in the news. 4 months back, in the Hindu and the Indian Express, there were 2 articles in the editorial which talked about the reformation that needs to take place in the administrative tribunals. Now, please understand this very well. When we talk about current affairs, now you will say, sir, they're asking about 2021. At that time too, we were doing, let us say, we were in college. How can we study them? No, bache. Please understand this very well. It is mentioned 2021 over here, but this article on this was very well in the news for few days, and in the newspaper for at least 2 to 3 editorials came. That is why, remember, let us take an example. If Smart City Mission, if you realize, comes in the newspaper right now, though it has been launched a few years back, but that becomes a current affair for you. That is why the reformation, again, this has got to do with a technical knowledge, whether you knew it or not, but it was in the newspaper. Even I was seeing the article where PW OnlyIAS answer writing practice, they had mentioned recently about the reforms that have taken place and the comparison of the administrative tribunals with the court system. So if you are doing regular practice of answer writing from the platforms also, you could have still managed it. But a good question, this is generally, this I will not put it into the category of difficult. A medium level question was this here. Compare and contrast the presidential powers to pardon in India and the US. As there are there any limits to both of the countries? What are the preemptive pardons? Now see, now please understand this very well. India and United Nations comparison of their democratic system and the presidential system is something that is very often taught in the class also. I was recently talking to the various teachers also. Even Bharat sir was discussing with me. He told me that he had taught it in the class also. So please remember, this is something that is taught in the class, that is present in the PW only as notes also. Because of late, the UPSC has been comparing 2 or more countries. For example, with respect to secularism, they had compared India and France. They had compared democratic systems of India and United States. The next term obviously comes with the president, and with the follow-up is the powers with respect to these systems. So obviously, you know what are the president powers with respect to India, and then you have to compare it with the United States. Again, if you had studied well, this portion, you could have done it. It is taught in the class repeatedly. It is mentioned in the notes also in the PW, and along with it, I think in one of the test series also, once or twice this question has come in PW, right? Let's move ahead. Now, these 3 questions, if you realize, many people say, sir, we cannot remember anything. We are good at analyzing things. But remember, if you are preparing for civil services, there are things that you need to recall. If you want to be a district magistrate, if you want to be in position, you need to recall also. So that is why you realize it is very different from the prelims exam, where you just have to mark the circles. Over here, you have to basically write. So please remember, this is the 3rd question. Let's move. Discuss the nature of Jammu and Kashmir Legislative Assembly after the Jammu and Kashmir Reorganization Act 2019. Now over here, please remember, it is Jammu Kashmir, remember, over here, their changes have been made over the time. You realize earlier on it was made a union territory, right? It was made the union territory. Now, even today, now you realize what have the changes been made. It is a union territory, still it has a legislature also now. So what are the provisions in that? You basically had to mention that. Along with it, describe the powers and functions of the Assembly of the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir. Now, please understand, whenever you read the chapter of Union and the states, along with the Union territories, you would have very often read and hear about Delhi. You read about Puducherry also. In those cases, you realize, unlike the other union territories who do not have a legislature, there is a legislature present in case of Delhi and Puducherry also. But when Jammu Kashmir was created, again, it is a union territory, has a legislature. That is why this question has been asked. There is a chapter of the union and the states. That is why this question becomes again important. This was a straightforward question. It was present in the current affairs also, the compilation also. So I don't think it should be difficult because this is something that you generally read. Again, one of the favorite questions, what generally they do is they will ask you sometimes Attorney General, sometimes they will ask you about CAG. This is a topic that is always repeated. One of the constitutional post, or let us say some executive position, executive bodies, or constitutional bodies, whatever, they'll pick one of those bodies and positions and ask you about them. See, Attorney General of India plays a crucial role in guiding the legal framework of the union government and ensuring sound governance through the legal council. Describe the responsibilities, rights and limitations. This was a straightforward lollipop question, a very lollipop question, and this has been asked in the past also. Attorney General of India has been asked in the past also. A very similar question was asked. It has been repeated again. So this was a lollipop question, one of the easiest question where even if you had read the basic book, any Lakshmikant or the class notes also, you know what are the powers, what are the responsibilities, right? Along with it, what are the issues and limitations that are associated. This was a direct lollipop question, a very straightforward, one of the easiest question that you can get in the paper. Next comes women's social capital complements in advancing empowerment and gender equity. What do you mean by social capital? Please understand. The word social capital is very important. That means through the networking on the connects that you have, how can you benefit out of it? So women's connect and networking can help in advancing the empowerment and gender equity. Let us understand this aspect. You know that women reservation bill has been passed, though it will be implemented after the Delimitation Commission has passed, given its report, and later on the implementation will take place. Do you realize why this bill was passed? That means in every field, whether it is finance, whether it is parliament, whether it is corporate, whether it is corporate governance, even in the case of the corporate governance, there is a mandatory position for women that she needs to be present. Why? Because you realize that whenever the women are present, they help in decision making, which is beneficial with respect to any field. Now, over here, it is not only advancing the women, but also gender equity. Because if males are the one who are making all the decisions for women also, how will it be helpful? So over here, what you have to do, you have to basically explain what social capital is, then how women's social capital helps, first with respect to advancing empowerment, then with respect to gender equity with example. And this was again a very simple question that has been again similar question on social capital. Please remember, few years back a question came on social capital. Why? Let me make it very clear from where this question is picked. If you realize, there are administrative reform commissions. Second administrative reform commissions have 15 reports. Out of those reports, a good amount of content has been given on the concept of social capital, how networking basically helps. That is why I told you, brief summary of the administrative reform commissions become equally important. In that particular report, as I had mentioned many times in the class, various teachers also teach you that social capital, how women are helping, how, let us say, even old age contribution with respect to that demographic dividend 2.2 was mentioned, 2.0 was mentioned. So these things are being picked up from the basic government reports. Now these reports of, let us say, administrative reform commissions have been there for such a long time. Second thing, now please understand, women's social capital had recently been in the news also. All these things that you are seeing, most of them are in the current affairs in the newspapers. Women's social capital had been there where, let me give you an example also what the article dealt about. It dealt with Kudumshri. Now, Kudumshri is a concept in Kerala where self-help group basically help the women so that they can basically collect together, take the loan from the bank, and over there it helps in the empowerment of the women. In that reference, women's social capital was mentioned in the Hindu newspaper. A good article came. That is why I always tell you, all those who are preparing for this examination, if you are neglecting the newspapers, you are definitely going to suffer in certain parts in GS paper 2 and 3 in particular. Right? Now let's see. E-governance. Simple. Do you realize? Please remember one thing, kids. I would say kids because for you are younger to me. Every single word that is mentioned in your syllabus, you should have a 2 sides note on that if you want to qualify this examination or get well in good marks in this. Why? Word e-governance is mentioned in your syllabus straight away. Now over here, e-governance projects have built-in bias towards technology and back-end integration, that user-centric designs. Now please see, when we read about e-governance, there are a lot of limitations associated with that. Now, whenever you are answering this question, let us say, e-governance projects have a built-in bias towards technology and back-end integration than user-centric designs. What do you mean by that? Do you realize today also, when whatever technologies that you have, very often they are in the English language. Many times it is difficult to comprehend because it was suitable for the people who created that rather than the people who are using it. So this is basically dealing with the problems that are associated with the e-governance projects. I'll give you an example. In Chhattisgarh, what happened is, with respect to certain payments that had to be made to the people or the laborers, over there, their fingerprints were required. Now, the laborers who were working there, because of the work they were doing, what happened is their fingerprints almost became non-existent. So when they clicked on that biometric, when they clicked on that, the machine was not able to detect their fingerprints. So they were not able to get the money. And similarly, this thing happened with the ration also. So what does it happen? E-technology or e-governance system can have problems also. So it is basically leading with a negative part, a critical aspect. So you had to mention, but along with it, please remember, you have to mention the positive aspects also after you have answered this. This is again a very simple, direct theoretical question that is generally explained to you or told to you by the teacher. So I don't think this is from any way a difficult question. Very simple. Next is, civil society organizations are often perceived as being anti-state actors than non-state actors, right? Now see, anti-state and non-state, what do you mean? Non-state means that, like for example, an NGO. Now NGO is, it is a body which is working on voluntary aspects, which is not backed by a government, let us say, or not associated with the government directly, or not a government body, right? Now that is a non-state, but when it becomes anti-state, it means that it is working on aspects which is hurting the unity and integrity of India. Why this question has come up, please understand that. Recently there was an article, 2-3 articles in the Hindu which talked about an intelligence bureau report which talked about that various NGOs and civil society movements are basically hurting the unity and integrity of India. For example, Greenpeace. Now Greenpeace is an NGO that deals with the environment, but we realized that over there, a lot of activities were carried out which were basically impacting the unity and integrity of India. That is where the funding was stopped by the government of India. So please understand, over here, we have to deal with the aspect. First, it's asked, do you agree? That means you have to quote the dimension of where all these issues are arising. Yes, there are certain problems. Along with it, you say, no, there are issues, there are advantages also where the civil society, and along with it, you realize they're doing good job also. So you have to mention both. Whenever the question is, do you agree, justify, please remember, you have to give both aspects, because every civil society organization is not bad. Again, this was a very simple, a direct question. There was no problem in this. You could have easily answered this. Next, India-Africa digital partnership is achieving mutual respect, co-development, long-term institutional partnership. Please remember, whenever the Honorable Prime Minister, Honorable President, Honorable Vice President are visiting certain countries, or certain presidents or certain dignitaries from other countries are visiting our country, those countries become important for the civil services international relation perspective. You would have realized that recently India, even the spokesperson of Ministry of External Affairs mentioned that we are looking at viability of developing or using the UPI in African countries also. And they said that the partnership, digital partnership, will be very helpful in boosting the relationship between India and Africa. So with respect to that, a document was released where India and Africa could basically develop, or they can mutually, let us say, grow together with respect to the digital partnership. Now, this was again in the newspapers repeatedly. A similar thing has been mentioned over here. So you had to basically elaborate. If you had studied that, you could have easily answered that. This was again in the newspapers for 3 to 4 days. 2-3 editorials were present. It was again in the international relations also. When you read current affairs also, the sessions that were done by Nikhil sir, over there also these things are mentioned. So I guess there should not be any problem, because this is something that has been in the news for quite few months also. And this is generally you read in international relations. Next. 10th, with the waning of globalization, post-Cold War, the post-Cold War world is becoming a site of sovereign nationalism. Now you realize this, with the waning of globalization, post-Cold War world, what is going on? Now when I talk about sovereign nationalism, what does it mean? It basically means that now every nation is focused on that we should be governed by ourselves rather than some other country dictating us. So over here, you have to give the various examples and prove it. Again, this is an easy question. You could have easily answered this. So there is no problem in this respect. What you could have done is, you could have first defined with respect to how globalization is basically waning. That means the impact of the changes that are taking place. Then in the post-Cold War world, it is a sign of sovereign nationalism. You could have explained what is sovereign nationalism. Then 1, 2, 3, you could have given the various points, how these things are basically being represented in the form of examples. So we will be doing this in a lot of detail. This is first reaction. Till now, if I realize, initial questions that were asked, these were very, let us say, centric with respect to knowledge, which you had read it, you could have done it well. Otherwise, there were you could have faced problems if you had not read comprehensively. But when you see, as you move ahead towards these questions, these are relatively simple. Attorney General, women social capital, e-governance, civil society, India, Africa, this concept. These are again relatively very easy questions where you could have scored really very well. Next comes constitutional morality. Again, constitutional morality word has been there in the news repeatedly. This has been asked twice in the UPSC paper itself. So this is not something that you should be unaware of, right? So constitutional morality is a fulcrum which acts as an essential checkpoint on the high functionaries and citizens alike. What does it mean? Check upon the high functioning citizen. That means this constitutional morality is like acting like a checkpoint on these functionaries as well as the citizens. In this view of the above observation of the Supreme Court, explain the concept of constitutional morality. This question has been repeated. Constitutional morality has been asked earlier also. Again, the question is, if you had not done the PYQs for that matter, previous year questions, you could have missed this. But again, this has been in the news various times. Its applications to ensure balance between judicial independence and judicial accountability. Please understand, over here you realize you often hear about the word judicial overreach, whether the government, basically the judiciary is intervening in the functioning of the executive and all. So you have to basically deal with this aspect because balancing between the judicial independence and accountability becomes important. Along with it, NJAC, because now you realize even with respect to the appointment also, the Supreme Court, if wants to appoint judges, it is basically based on the collegium system. In the collegium system, you realize that it is their own will whom they want to appoint. That is why there is concept of judicial accountability also that comes. So we have to use all those examples, references, judgments in order to explain. This question has been explained earlier also, asked earlier also. So there is nothing new in this. This question is made up of two questions which have been asked in the previous years. First, constitutional morality was asked. Second, with respect to judicial accountability, these two questions have been asked previously. They've combined into one question and asked. So this is nothing that is new here. Indian Constitution has conferred the amending power on the ordinary legislature institutions with a few procedural hurdles. In the view of this statement, examine the procedure and substantive limitations on amending power of the parliament to change the constitution. Straightforward polity question which you read in your with the teachers when they're teaching these polity sessions. This is straightforward questions. What are the limitations of the amending power of the parliament to change the constitution? This is generally mentioned in your Lakshmikant also. This is mentioned in your PW OnlyIAS polity book also. This is taught by all the teachers also. This was a direct question that was asked, so I don't think you should face problems over here. This was a very straightforward question. Discuss the evolution of the collegium system of India. Right now you were just mentioning. Now this is again direct question. That is why I'm telling you, if you assume or presume that the questions are not direct or from, let us say, the books that are there, let us say Lakshmikant or the teacher that are teaching, then you will suffer. This is basic. If you have studied for prelims also, you can straight away see, you study the collegium system, how it has evolved. The various judges act. Now the last one being the NJAC judgment that was given by the Supreme Court. In that particular case, that was the last judge's case that has come up. So you had to start from there till NJAC, you had to basically mention it. Please understand that these are directly being picked up from the standard books like Lakshmikant. Direct questions have been picked up. That is why I tell you, many people tell me, sir, we find it very difficult to read that. But you have to read it multiple times. When I used to give the paper, I had read it multiple times. Only then the content comes. If you have read it twice and thrice and you say that we will remember everything, it is not possible. You will face problems in your prelim exams also for that matter, because it becomes difficult to recall. Now these are direct questions that have come up. This statement is directly mentioned in your Lakshmikant book also, and the teachers have taught you also this. Critically examine the advantages and disadvantages of the system of appointment of the judges of the Supreme Court and that of US. Again, when you study the comparison, right? When you study the comparison of the various democratic systems, you would have realized that there is a topic also where various countries are compared. We often study or compare India, United States, and France for that matter at least. In those cases, you realize we study with respect to the judicial aspect also. These are taught in the class. Now, this is again very simple concept that is being asked. There is nothing new. This was taught in the class also. You would have realized this. And this is mentioned in your polity book of PW OnlyIAS also. So this is not something that you will say, sir, this has come out of somewhere which you do not know. But say, please remember, that is why we say out all the questions which I'm reading right now, these are either PYQ concepts or picked up from your class lectures or the books. Now you'll say, sir, we all know we can do that. But beta, we all know is fine, but we have to do it. The question that are asked, if you have done your standard books very well, class lectures where teachers teach you to clear your concepts, and the current affairs. And obviously when you're doing, you do the PYQs. If you have done this, you do not require any other content. And obviously you have their answer writing practice. You can get very superb marks in this paper. You are very lucky this time because paper 1 also came relatively easy, and this paper, except for the starting 1 questions which appear difficult, which are not. For a weird reason, that those were picked up from the current affairs. You might have, if you are neglecting the current affairs, that is why I tell you, do not neglect the current affairs. Read the newspapers, which is important, the compilation which are given you by the institutes or whichever institute you, for that matter. That is again becomes important because what is appearing is, let us say 21 or various like 2021, what happened? These were in the news recently. This is not something that has been picked up from 2021. No, this was in the news. That is why they have picked up and put it here. Do you understand this? Something that has happened in, let us say, 1970s. UPSC can ask you the question of 1970s, but you will say, so how come they have asked? Beta, because there is a possibility that something related to those things might be in the news now. So they will relate it and put it in the paper. Understand that thing, right? So next, where were we? Okay, we have done this. Then you have 14. Examine the evolving pattern of center-state relations in context to the planned development in India. How far have the recent reforms impacted the fiscal federalism? Now, please remember, when I talk about financial center-state financial relations, this is directly present in your books, standard books taught by the teachers also. First. Second, this is when the planned development comes, you know that very well, they are talking with respect to the planning commission. Later on, planning commission, that means everything that was centrally planned changed to the Niti Aayog concept, where you realize that power was decentralized. The states had the ability to plan themselves. Niti Aayog is like a guiding line now. Planning commission was something that was a super powerful body, where the Prime Minister being the chairman and the deputy chairman. Last time you had Prime Minister Manmohan Singh as a chairman and deputy chairman being Dr. Mantek Singh Ahluwalia. So that was a very powerful body. Now that system has been gone away with and the Niti Aayog came. So the responsibility lied with the states to plan their stuff and how they wanted to proceed. So you had to basically mention the constitutional provisions, how those relations have evolved with respect to the planning commission, and then moving towards with respect to the Niti Aayog, along with them mentioning about the finance commission also, how the changes have taken place. So these things had to be mentioned. Obviously, we will go into other dimensions also, but this is again, this has a very core ingredient of something that was in the newspapers and along with it picking up from the standard books. So both of these things are combined here. Again, a mediocre question and not a difficult question. What are environmental pressure groups? Let us read. Discuss the role in raising awareness, influencing policies and advocating environmental protection. Very simple question. What do you mean by a pressure group? See, pressure groups are if there are two things that generally come. First is political party and pressure group. Now, political parties are those who contest election. Political parties are those who contest election and be in power. Pressure groups are those groups or bodies which exert pressure on the government but do not contest election. Remember that is very, very important. Pressure groups in general are bodies, organizations which pressurize the government so that the government basically changes its policies, laws, or brings certain things which are favorable to them. For example, you realize that there were, let us say, some agricultural protests going on. So those are by the agricultural pressure groups. If you realize there are certain groups which are basically demanding certain reservation with respect to caste, that is caste-based pressure group. If there are certain groups based on religion demanding that we need some reservation with respect to religion, though there is no such system in India, but if they're demanding, that is what religious-based pressure group. Or someone is demanding certain law has come up which is hurting certain sentiment with respect to religion, then again religion-based pressure group will again request the government to change it. So pressure groups can be religious, caste-based, class-based. Now do you realize there are organizations of industries like CII, Confederation of Indian Industries. There are NASSCOM. So these are what? Industrial-based pressure groups which pressurize the government to bring favorable laws for them. Right? Now please understand this very, very well. Similarly, you have environmental pressure groups which are exerting pressure on the government so that you basically balance the development and environment. Example, Center for Science and Environment is like a pressure group which publishes Down to Earth magazine. Now, they are the ones who do a lot of research also, advocate also things that whatever you want to do, have a proper environmental impact assessment, social impact assessment, so that a development as well as environmental protection is balanced. Now you saw in Uttarakhand, a lot of disaster took place. Lot of environmental pressure groups have been involved for a very long time, and they said, please balance the development, otherwise a lot of deterioration will take place. That is why those things were neglected very often, and see a lot of issues arise. So over here you have to define what pressure group is, what environmental pressure group is, then their role with respect to awareness, how they influence the policy making. For example, when we talk about advocating rights, there have been various NGOs like pressure groups like Narmada Bachao Andolan. Then you have India Against Corruption. So those were that was again not related to environment, India Against Corruption, but normally a pressure group. Similarly, Center for Science and Environment. Greenpeace, obviously, again, there have been controversies associated with that, but again, it is also a pressure group related to environment. So you could have mentioned them with examples and then you could have written. Please remember something, whenever you have this question, it is demanding a lot of things. Pressure group, environmental pressure group, discuss the role. First, raising awareness. How it is raising awareness, education, mass mobilization, going to schools. Over there, you have to mention the examples also. Influencing policies, write the heading, mention the examples along with the civil society, or let us say the pressure groups which are involved there. Advocating for environmental protection. Again, heading, then certain examples. That is how you are given the marks, because the question will be divided into parts. One part, second, third, and fourth. Clear? Next. Inequality is the ownership pattern of resources is one of the major causes for poverty. What does it mean? Inequality of ownership pattern of resources. There has been a recent report which says that 1% of the Indians, top 1%, basically occupy 42% of India's wealth. Right? Similarly, you realize majority of the Indians are landless. What do you analyze by these aspects? Poverty is because there is ownership. Inequality is the ownership pattern. Inequality in the ownership pattern. What do you mean by inequality in ownership pattern? That means there are certain people who have more resources. There are other people have less resources. And because of this pattern, you realize it is related to poverty also. Because the major chunk are the one who do not have the resources, are the one who are poor. Let us take an example. National Food Security Act gives ration to 80 crore people. 80 crore people. Now, 80 crore people are in a way, right? 80 crore people in a way are in a condition where they can face food insecurity. But other 20% which you're talking are well, and they're very well off. Please remember, let me give you a basic stat. In India, 97% of the Indians do not have the ability to spend more than 500 rupees per day. That means they cannot spend more than 15,000 per month. 97%. Other 3% are the ones who have the major stake with respect to land, with respect to money, with respect to, let us say, resources that they own, with respect to mining that they might be owning, mine regions that may be owning. So this is what is to be presented over here. So it has got to do with inequality. You have to show how the ownership patterns are varying. You could have easily used the map over here. I'll give you a brief example. In my classes, when we are doing the aspect of social justice also, I'm doing poverty. I draw the map of India. If you see the map of India, the poverty regions which are there, let us say in the regions of Bihar, in the regions of Madhya Pradesh, in the regions of Eastern UP, the land holdings becomes very small. And that overlaps with the region of poverty. So you could have used a few maps also and presented over here. So this is how it could have been. Again, an easy question. Again, you have to analyze and understand that. If there was nothing that was difficult over here. It was easy. 17. In the contemporary development models, decision-making and problem-solving responsibilities are not located close to the source of information and execution, defeating the objective of development. Critically evaluate. Please understand. This is something very important. This statement, I am reading this question paper for the first time. I haven't read it. The moment it came, we started the lecture. I have read this line, even in similar line in the Administrative Reform Commission report also. With just one single read, what does it mean? Please understand. There is a concept of development which basically deals with top-down development and bottom-up development. Supposingly, I'll give you an example. If I am planning for the tribals, development models, something that came as question number 20 in GS paper 1. If I am developing certain models where I have to develop, let us say, or give facilities to the tribals. Now, from the, let us say I am a bureaucrat who does not know much about the tribals, and I start planning about them. What will happen? I will not be developing them because I do not know them. I will be imposing certain things. So what do you see? In the contemporary development model, decision making and problem solving are not located close to the source of information. Wherever the things have to be done, we over them might not be involving them. So this is again certain things which you can use. A lot of examples with respect to tribal development, with respect to rural development, with respect to, let us say, Administrative Reform Commission mentions about hierarchical hierarchies that are present that basically defeats the purpose of the proper development at the ground level. Even today, tell me one thing, if the Gram Sabhas, let us say, the Gram Sabhas, in a way, we realize that we have given them a lot of power, but the real power still lies with the district magistrate. Execution has to be done at the ground level, at the Gram Sabha level, but the district magistrate stops the thing because he thinks that I am the one who's the boss. At the tribals also the same thing happens. I'll give you an example, tribal example. Vedanta Group was given the right to mine in the Niyamgiri Hills in Odisha, right? In Odisha, when the right was given to them, but Niyamgiri Hill is sacred for the Khond tribes which used to stay there or which are staying there. So certain NGOs basically filed a PIL with Supreme Court saying that, see, it is sacred for them. You do not understand that, because for the Khond tribe, the Niyamgiri Hill was like a abode of a god, and ancestral spirits used to be reside there according to the Khonds. Now, which the miners, not the government, understood, where the execution had to take place. So what happened? It created a problem. So over here, we have to deal with this perspective from the aspect of government bodies, from the aspect of execution at the ground level, from the aspects of, let us say, rural development. All these things had to be mentioned and dealt with. Clear? Okay. National Commission for the Protection of Child Rights. Again, one body is generally picked up every time. Either they pick up again, like let us say UPSC, Election Commission. So they have picked up this National Commission on the Protection of Child Rights to address the challenges faced by children, examine the policies and suggest the measures. Please remember, this question with respect to policy, with respect to children, had been asked few years ago also. What are the policies related to children? So this part, policy thing, has been repeated. Suggest the measures the commission can initiate to tackle the issue. Again, you have to mention about them. What are the challenges that are faced? Then the policies with respect to children. This was asked 3 to 4 years back, where the policy with respect to women and children were asked. So this is again a repetition of the question that was asked in previous years. Suggest the measures the commission can initiate. Now, this is on the basis of your analytical ability. You can use administrative reform commissions. You can use the reports of Niti Aayog, which have been recently initiated. There have been judgments of the Supreme Court relating to that. You could have mentioned here. This is again a very practical, simple question. Even when you read this from the Lakshmikant, over there also they have mentioned the points. If you had read it, you could have easily answered this. Energy security constitutes. You saw solar energy being asked in paper 1, right? You saw solar energy being asked in paper 1. Let me make it very clear. Next, tomorrow is your GS paper 3. There is great possibility that you can be asked certain questions on lithium. You can be asked on electric vehicles. You can be asked on hydrogen mission or hydrogen based fuel or hydrogen based, let us say, vehicles. You will see tomorrow, though some other teacher will take the session. Mark my word, you will see certain questions on that. And obviously, it is related to energy. Because there will be a question most probably, because you realize energy through electric vehicles also, you realize the electricity is generated via coal. So that is also polluting in nature. You will see similar questions. One more question tomorrow in GS3 will also come, because these are common trends that is there. That has got to do with development and environment, right? Similarly, you realize similar trend is going on. Energy security constitutes the dominant kingpin of the India's foreign policy, and it is linked to India's overarching influence in the Middle Eastern countries. How would you integrate energy security with India's foreign policy? Please understand. If you see ONGC Videsh, you see a lot of private sector investment being done. They have basically related this question with the energy security. You have to mention what are the energy issues, What are the future protection with respect to energy requirements? Then you realize that foreign policy means that you can basically collaborate with various countries, as mentioned over here, Middle Eastern countries. How can that be helpful for reserving or conserving, or let us say protecting India's interest? This question has been asked twice or thrice in the civil services examination. It is based on the PYQ. Over here, the question basically links two concepts. First, energy security. Second, India's energy relations with the Middle Eastern countries. Two questions have been combined. So an examiner that has made this question has basically combined two PYQs into one. Secondly, this content or this question can also be derived from the fact that it was in your newspapers repeatedly of the few from the past, I think past 1 or 2 months which I was reading the newspaper. This was present in the editorials also. That is why I always tell you, reading newspapers becomes a very, 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 very important task. If you are missing on that, possibly you will be missing on a lot of things. Next, the reform process of the United Nations remains, and this is something an evergreen question. Evergreen question. Let us see what it is saying. The reform process of the United Nations remains unresolved because of the delicate imbalance of the East and the West, and entanglement of the USA versus Russo-Chinese alliance. Examine and critically evaluate the East-West policy confrontation with this regard. Now, please remember what is going on is, India has always been advocating with respect to reforms. Now, what is going on? US earlier, before this issues or let us say the problem arose between US and tariff-related problem arose, US has been very ardently advocating that we want reforms. And it said, yes, also, we want India also to play a very critical role. That is again, what was the Western view? Yes, they were in the favor. On the other hand, you realized Russia also said, yes, we need expansion of the permanent members, and India should also be a member. But when it comes to China, now China is an evergreen friend of Pakistan. And if India becomes a permanent member, it will create problems for Pakistan, and Pakistan is a darling of China. Being a darling of China, it will never want India to become. So what happens is, when this is one scenario, Russia is a close friend of China because there is linkage between them because of the energy and the sanctions that have been done by the United States. So Russia will become neutral in case China becomes anti-Indian. So that is why India is in a position where it wants to be let us say, work on the aspect of expansion of the, let us say, the permanent members and the reforms that need to take place for a greater representation. But it is stagnant because the West and the East are fighting. Over here, the concept is again of the ideology of the capitalistic and the socialistic, and India being there, who to favor, who not to favor. Now, the problem arose that now US is imposing sanctions on us. We are slowly a little bit shifting towards and talking to China also now. You saw the NSA going to China. You saw the foreign minister talking to Russia. So that is why India's caught, because there is no scenario where both the blocks are basically agreeing at one time. This is where the tanglement is there. So over here, what was the first thing? You need to mention what are the expected reforms that should be taken. What are the current stats? What is the current scenario? What India is facing the issues, because you should mention now India is very well capable and it just should be a permanent member. But what are the views of United States? What are the views of Russia, China? What are the problems and what should be done? This is what was done, and this is again, please remember, reforms question has been there from I think 1980s to 1970s. This question has been present in civil services. This is something that is not new. With respect to China and India, the similar question has been there. I think 7 to 8 years ago also was asked. What I can analyze from this, please understand, we have done all the 20 questions here. If you ask me now how the question paper was, I would say it was easy to medium. A reason behind it, please understand. Many people will find that, no sir, there are a lot of questions, 2 or 3 questions which are very difficult. But you need to understand you're preparing for civil services. 1 or 2 questions being bouncers, which might appear bouncer, which might not be, is something very normal. You have to tackle the question, the challenges that come across you, right? So it was not a difficult paper. Yes, if you compare it with GS paper 1, it can be little tricky with respect to GS paper 1 because GS paper 1 was relatively very easy. This was close to moderate, easy to moderate. Some would put it into moderate category. Now, please understand this very well. What you have to do and what you should learn from this. Many questions came from polity. First of all, you should have a very good command over your basics. Now, what does basics means? Any candidate who has prepared well with respect to the preliminary examination, right? Preliminary examination, or that means you're preparing, let us say prelims and mains together. Let us say you are reading the class notes, or let us say Lakshmikant, or whatever standard book you're reading. That should be read very well and not once and twice, many times. Clear? Once you have done that very well, you will have the command over that subject. So these questions, you would see out of the 10 questions of polity being asked, 6 to 7 could have been done from the standard books. Obviously, you have to add little bit current affairs. Obviously, you have to add some knowledge with respect to, let us say, certain reports, Administrative Reform Commission reports. Let us say sprinkling of that needs to be done. There is no doubt about that, but could have been managed. Let us say CAG is being asked, right? Sorry, not CAG, Attorney General is being asked. These questions have been asked. So these are very simple, straightforward questions. If you have not read those, you will not be able to attempt it. So standard books first. Doing the standard books well, revising it multiple times, revising your class notes become very, very important first. Second, whenever you are reading the subject, understand by simply doing the standard book does not mean that you will qualify. Why? Because you realize that there is a close relationship of the current affairs in these GS paper 2 and GS paper 3. Reading the newspapers every day becomes mandatory for you. I've told you many times in my geography classes, in my sessions on the YouTube, in my anthropology classes, every time I tell you this. Reading the newspapers are mandatory. Second, you should read the current affairs. Now, compilations from whichever place. Let us say PW has a monthly compilation. Now, you cannot remember the newspapers because whatever you read, newspapers are there to enhance your critical understanding and what is going on in the world. Let us assume if you do not read the newspaper and you simply rely on the monthly magazine, that means you are 1 month behind the world. That is why every day when you read a newspaper, take out half an hour or 1 hour to read the current affair magazine. So, you are updated with respect to the current affairs also. This repeated again and again, you will be able to recall the current affairs. Third thing, previous year questions. PW provides with a previous year question. Recently, a book has been launched, I think by PW only, with respect to the previous year question topic wise. I will give you the link in the Telegram also. Over there, all the questions are there. Now, what does that help you in? That basically helps you that this question from this topic, let us say poverty, let us say constitution. In the past 15-20 years, these questions have been asked. Examiners tend to keep the previous year question in front to just have an understanding what type of questions need to be created. If out of the PYQs, 2 to 3 questions are picked up, you have realized in this paper also, constitutional morality, let us say, if I see PYQ, let me tell you the PYQ aspect. If you see, this question has been asked in the previous years also. 1, 2, certain part 2.5 I will say. 3, 4th, 5, little bit, 5, let us say put it 4 only. 5th, India-Africa relationship have been asked previously also. 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10, 11 questions have a close relationship with your previous year questions. It does not mean the question straight away has been asked as it was. No. It means, let us say constitutional morality is being asked and it is attached with some topic. Now, please understand this. Please understand this. A question which is being asked does not mean that exactly a same question will come. It basically means that a question will be built on that concept. If you do not know the concept itself, how will you answer? Do you realize this? This is something very, very straightforward. You need to understand this. So the third thing which I've told you is you need to analyze the previous year questions because the examiner can pick up those things. It is quite possible next time they might not pick up. But who knows? You have to use all these weapons so that you are able to appear. So what is the summary of this? First three, standard books and the class notes which are being taught to you. Second, over here, you need to analyze the newspapers and the current affairs need to be read well. Third thing over is analysis of the previous year questions. Fourth thing, let me add it to you. Every single word that is present in your syllabus, you should have a note of 1.5 page or 2 pages, let us say, on every single word. So that it will involve what is that concept, positives, negatives, and dimension associated with that. Because that is going to help you when you're giving the paper. And last is practice of your answer writing and mocks. If you do these things well, I am guaranteeing you, you will not face problems when you are appearing for any paper of the civil services, be it the optionals, be it the... Hopefully, you enjoyed the session. Hopefully, it was helpful for you. Hopefully, you liked the session. We will continue or come up with certain discussions also and resolve all the aspects that are associated with these question papers. The detailed analysis will come tomorrow. I'll be covering the social justice part tomorrow, and we will discuss all these things in detail. So a lot of hard work is required from your side. Please remember, bache, you have to put in a lot of hard work. This paper is not difficult, but if you put in the hard work, I am guaranteeing you, you will be successful in your lives. So lots of love from my side. We will be coming with the detailed discussion tomorrow of this particular paper. 7 p.m. we will be having the discussion, a detailed discussion of GS paper 1, where Abhishek sir will be taking history. I'll be taking geography and society. So meet you at exactly at 7 p.m. and God bless you. Lots of love from my side. And as you always say at the end, Jai Hind.